Today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Derek here.
Eric here.
Eric, we've got a lot to cover, particularly in the NFL,
Yeah, a
both
lot of
past
sports
and
news.
present. So let's kick it off. Brett Favre. Brett Favre has broken his silence. He has been in a swirling controversy over Mississippi welfare fraud scandal, where the allegations are basically that he took money that was earmarked for welfare,
Millions of dollars,
and used it to line his pockets rather than give it to the intended sort of recipients. Now, a lot of people adjacent to this case have already pled guilty, and people think that everything is sort of circling up to maybe charge Brett Favre in all of this.
And there were text messages and
Yes.
things like showing that he kind of seemed to have some awareness of this.
Some awareness.
But
Now,
according to him,
he has completely denied this, and he's done it in pretty emphatic terms. He says he's been unjustly smeared in the media over his connection to this $77 million welfare fraud scam. Here's what he says. I have done nothing wrong, and it is past time to set the record straight. No one ever told me, and I did not know that funds designated for welfare recipients were going to the university or me. I was just trying to help my alma mater, blah, blah, blah. This is Brett Favre basically setting up his defense. Now, as you said, during this whole period where the controversy has been swelling, there's been text messages that came out that somewhat undermine that he was completely in the dark. He needs to say this because if he was aware that he was participating in a welfare fraud, he will definitely face charges given the amounts involved. He did give back the $1.1 million, but he hasn't given back the interest on that, $228,000 in interest, because he's saying, look, I didn't know. Here's your money back. If it was for someone else, fine, take it back.
and even if he said, like, I didn't know, nobody anywhere involved with this was like, hey, where's all these millions of dollars going? Did nobody tell Brett he can't just do what he wants with it?
You know, this is emblematic to me. I think this defense will probably fall a little short given the circumstantial evidence surrounding the case.
Well, and not even circumstantial. There's like text like, hey, is this money for this? Can I use this money for this? Like, they're receipts.
Yes. Here's one thing I want to say in Brett Favre's defense, and I'm no Brett Favre fan or apologist by any stretch of the imagination. But when you are a coddled football player all your life, he has been a star quarterback for the majority of his life. He is a legend in Mississippi, which is a small state where football stars are revered, treated like gods. He's a big deal. And in his life, a lot has just been handed to him. I mean, look, he earned a lot. He's a very successful football player. But a lot of times he was just collecting accolades and collecting free lunches when he goes out. So maybe he thought, hey, this is just what happens when the king retires. You just collect random. Now it's a lot of money.
I kind of buy that defense when you have people like very successful, famous people like with like tax fraud.
Yeah.
If they're like, you know what, I don't do my own taxes. I hire people for that. I have no idea what they were doing.
Right.
He was involved, like it is a charity and it was millions of dollars and you have to actively be a participant in that and have to have
and some of the allegations
some sort of idea.
And to your point of being a participant in the fraud, you also have to be a participant usually to collect any money. Some of the allegations are that he would be scheduled for speeches that he would never give and still collected money for speeches. Now, that's going to be a difficult sort of set of facts for him to argue against, because if you're collecting money for something that you're supposed to do, a speech fee, Hillary Clinton, former presidents, they go out and they give speeches for large sums of money. Brett Favre could be on the speaking tour circuit, but some people are saying he wasn't doing this and still collecting over $1 million. At some point, you can't be we call it the ostrich defense, where you stick your head in the sand and say, I don't know what happened around me, but I just got money in my bank account. I don't want to know anything.
Yes,
the less I know, the better.
The people who were running this, we know he was messaging directly with those people.
Yes.
So you had to have some idea of what was...
He's going to try to say there's sort of plausible deniability in these text messages. Yeah, I was talking about collecting this money. I didn't know the source came from a welfare pool. I'm allowed to collect money
in the
from
messages.
The
he wasn't like, "Hey, am I ripping off these kids for the welfare?" Like, no, it's never anything like that. So maybe he didn't know, but
I'll tell you see a lot of convictions where you don't see, "Hey, let's rip off the welfare fund." You don't need that level of evidence to convict someone when there's enough sort of smoke there to prove that there was intent to do something wrong. So we'll have to see. Giving back the money was a good start. I don't just to be clear, the fact that he gave back ill-gotten money isn't indicative of his guilt in receiving it in the first place. He gave it back because they came and said, "Hey, this money was earmarked," and he said, "Okay, I want to make good. I don't know what went wrong, but here's the money back." That won't be held against him necessarily, but this issue is far from over. Look, his denial is something that you're seeing him set up a defense, and it's indicative that the this is getting serious for Brett Favre.
Yeah.
You could see criminal charges against an NFL great. So we'll have to see. He's now
somebody will be left holding the bag in this. Like
someone will be left.
There's
been a lot of people who've pled guilty already. So,
so
you can imagine some of those might have been talking about Brett Favre, starting to cooperate to get lighter sentences and whatnot. So this story is far from over, but at least now we've seen what Brett Favre intends to say in defense of himself.
Yeah. Different kind of NFL response.
Tell me about Davante Adams. You're a big Monday Night Football fan.
Yeah. The Davante Adams plays for the Raiders after a game, lost the game by 1 point.
Yeah.
He and he and another receiver ran into each other, knocked each other down, and that's basically why they lost the game.
During the final moments of the game. That's key.
So he's not in a good mood walking off the field, and there's a camera person not even really filming him, just trying to run in front of him to get a different shot.
Got a tripod. He's
a guy carrying a tripod, and Davante walks up and just shoves the guy to the ground.
Right.
Just because he's in a bad mood.
Yeah. Check out the video of the push first, and then we're going to show you his apology, because we're going to want to hear both. But here's the video of the push.
Frustration from Adams, and whoa. Can't have that as Adams leaves the field. The frustrations on this evening bubbling over, and that's not what you want to see as the...
All right, so what I see in that video is a guy who's doing his job, maybe thought he could clear the path in front of him before Davante crossed. Maybe he was a little late in starting his run, and Davante just sort of shoved him to the ground. It's not with malice necessarily, but you can clearly see
it's frustration. It's like throwing your helmet to the ground.
He also doesn't help him up, which is not a great look. Not a great look, but he is frustrated at the end of the game. As you said, his two players collided. He was one of them, and it cost them the game. So players get frustrated. There's a lot of testosterone and adrenaline running through their veins, and he was running to the tunnel, and someone got in his way and he pushed him.
He immediately apologized.
He did. Now let's listen to the apology.
And before I answer anything else, I want to apologize to the guy. It was some guy running off the field, and he ran, jumped in front of me. We coming off the field, and I bumped into him and kind of pushed him, and I think he ended up on the ground. So I want to say sorry to him for that, because that was just frustration mixed with him running and literally just running in front of me, and that was shouldn't have responded that way. But that's how I initially responded. So I want to apologize to him for that.
Now we read that differently. Tell me your take on his apology.
When he says the guy was literally running in front of me, I took it as him because he's being so contrite about everything else. Like, the guy wasn't in my face. He wasn't asking me questions about losing or anything. The guy was just literally just running in front of me, doing his job, and I took it out on him, and I shouldn't have done that.
Oh, Eric, you couldn't be more wrong.
You are so wrong.
You couldn't be more wrong.
You're so wrong.
This is a football player who is tinging his apology with a little bit of victim shaming. What he seems to be saying to me is that he is sort of rationalizing his behavior. He is also apologizing for it, but it's one of those apologies where I want to explain to you, I was both frustrated and this dude jumped out in front of me. It's like hitting a cat or hitting a kid on a bike in front of you. You can say, look, I'm sorry that the child perished after I hit it with my car,
Jeez,
but the child darted into the road. No, but you should just say,
he's blaming the guy for being in front of him?
Oh, I think he's absolutely, without question, he is saying this guy darted in front of me. And you can watch the video. The guy's doing his job. He has to cover the shot, and he thought he could dart to the other side or whatever, and he missed it. But you don't just push someone down.
I don't think he was shaming the guy.
Field.
I think he was just saying the guy was just kind of what you're saying. The guy was doing his job. He was literally just running in front of me, and I knocked him down, and I shouldn't have done that.
I would feel very differently if the cameraman, and they often are, it's a sort of dangerous job in a way, if he was hit during action in the game. If he's on the sideline and Davante Adams dives out of bounds to try to get a ball and knocks him
that's the
over.
risk you assume. I mean,
that's an assumed risk. That's an okay.
Yeah.
This is after the game. He's trotting off the field. There's no rush for you to get in the tunnel. That guy is in a rush to get the shot.
It was wrong of him to knock him down, and he acknowledged that. If you're the guy, so I don't think the camera person hit the ground pretty hard.
Help him up.
No, but I'm saying, so I don't think the guy broke any bones or was injured. So does he try and sue or anything?
No, I don't.
I think I think if you're the guy, you take the apology.
I think this guy has a good job of running the cameras, and he's probably more inclined to accept the apology and move on with his life and cover the next game. Should Davante, given this tepid, half-assed apology, give him a signed football or something? Absolutely. He didn't knock the guy down and didn't help him out.
He should do something nice for the guy, but I think it was a genuine apology. He seemed, because he said, I immediately felt horrible about it. I knew what I did was wrong.
Did you read his body language, though? Gosh.
No, I heard his voice. I heard the words he said.
So we see this a little bit different. Either way, look, I don't think this goes any further than this. It is not a vicious attack.
This is not something to sue
pounce on
over.
him and hit him in the face or anything like that. He knocked him over.
This was a guy in a bad mood lashing out.
Yeah.
Didn't hurt the guy.
Give him a signed football. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, okay.
All right, let's move on.
Kim Kardashian, wow. Having to pay for private security for her children's school because Kanye has basically doxed his own children. He is saying where they go to school. He's been naming the school because he wants them to go to his Donda Academy. So maybe that's his end game of like, oh, I'm going to make it so that they can't safely attend this other school anymore.
I'm sure that's what he's thinking, but he's imperiling his kids in the process.
So now Kim is paying for the security, not because she's worried about Kanye, obviously, but she's worried about people,
his security issues. These are very, very famous people, and they want some discretion in their whereabouts so that, crazy people don't stalk them and so forth.
And to kind of add to this is so Kanye, in his ongoing battles with everyone, has gotten into it with Lil Boosie, the rapper, and had this kind of Kanye posted something about how
that's troll on troll energy.
That's troll on troll
Boosie
is what it is.
knows
But
his way
at
around
the end of
internet.
this post, Kanye says something about how like he's been bullied by black celebrities for so long, and he's like basically says I'm ready to come and shoot the school up, like that he's like a bullied kid in school who's coming to shoot the school.
And just using this kind of language.
Why even float the idea of a school shooting while you're also saying this is where my kids go to school? Like this is going nowhere good, and he has to see that at a point, right?
I think he does see it, and it is intentional to the. You have to view everything about Kanye through the lens of potentially a product of mental illness. That being said, there's intentionality behind using the term school shooting in this particular climate. Kanye knows what he's doing when he says, I feel bullied and feel like I want to lash out and shoot up a school. It's deeply irresponsible. He is an adult. And this, to me, crosses a sort of serious line. Now that the kids are potentially in danger, usually I would say, oh, this is Kardashians creating a storyline. But no, they're extremely famous. They're at a school. A lot of people are interested in them. We review TROs about Kardashians endlessly in the newsroom.
And they are very protective of their children. For all the manufactured, staged, whatever drama, they've always been that way about their kids.
And to mention school shootings, and after you've sort of had this conflict about schooling, he wants his kids to go to Donda Academy, as you said, but they're in these other schools. It's horrific. You know, I have been on the side of Kanye is someone we should have not pity, but sympathy for what he is sort of wrestling with in a very public manner. He's a very famous person with, I think, serious sort of mental issues, some of which he has sort of been open about. But at a point, there's a danger.
Well,
you brought up the Ricky Martin
and,
issue. Like at some point, you have to sort of check this behavior because it endangers others.
Well, that's the thing. We live in Los Angeles, and there are a lot of homeless people in LA. The problem's like really bad right now, and we need to do something to help these people because a lot of them do have mental issues. Right. And so you want to get help and help people, but also if you're on the street and someone comes swinging a skateboard at you because they're having an episode, there are ways to deal with that, but also you have to protect yourself.
That's right. And you have to protect your loved ones. And Kim is doing that, and she's amping up security. But the issue she's going to face, I think, for a very long time. We're talking about like decades. I think they're far from over. I think Kanye will continue to cycle between these phases because he's so famous. He has a lot of yes people around him, and anyone who crosses him feeds his narrative of this sort of persecution complex that everyone's against me and I'm the only genius and I need to fight back harder. So it's an impossible problem to sort of address in a way. I don't know what you do about Kanye short of putting him in a straitjacket and institutionalizing him, which we don't do in this country anymore and shouldn't, frankly. But it is a very difficult thing to watch publicly play out. And I just don't think it's over. I don't know the solution to this. I don't know where this ends.
It's just sad all the way around.
It is extremely sad. Well, let's move on to something that is, I think, sad to some people and sort of a triumph for others. This is the case of Adnan Syed, who was the subject of the wildly popular 2014 Serial podcast, which basically put podcasting on the map. At least true crime podcasting exploded onto the scene with the Serial podcast. He was convicted in 1999 for the murder of Hae Min,
his girlfriend.
Hae Min Lee. He was convicted of that. The Serial podcast goes through the entirety of the case and points out some of the prosecutorial flaws in the case, some of the evidentiary gaps.
You sound like a real lawyer right now.
Listen, it
the
got
evidentiary gaps. They didn't bring no good evidence.
That's right.
No good
evidence. Well, it's true. And look, people started to galvanize around this case and file new motions for new trials and for his release and so forth.
He spent 20 years in prison for this.
20 years in prison for this, and a lot of people
always
think he was
maintained his
wrongly
innocence.
convicted. That's right. Never accepted any deals. Was convicted. Spent 20 years in prison on a life sentence. He was released when the prosecutor, which is extremely rare, said, we need to release this guy. We didn't run down the initial prosecutors on the case, because as you said, 20 years ago were different prosecutors than currently. And they said they didn't run down all of the potential suspects. There were 2 other people. They didn't turn over exculpatory evidence, which is evidence that might show he's innocent, which
there were 2 other very
do.
viable suspects in this case.
There
right?
were other
that
suspects
they never pointed towards or named at all in the original trial.
That's right. In 1999, there was also sort of DNA evidence was much newer, so a lot of things weren't tested. So they released him, but they said, look, we're going to continue this investigation, and we may bring charges against Adnan. This is not over. Well, it's over.
It's over.
They're not going to recharge him. Adnan will stay a free man. Now, Heyman Lee's family said they were blindsided by his release in the first place and said they weren't kept in the loop. You know, I went through pains of saying prosecutors are not the attorneys for the victims. They seem like it, but they're not. They're the attorneys for the state.
Yeah.
They sort of want to convict people who have broken laws, but they don't represent the families. So they don't have to keep them apprised. However, Mosby, I think her name's Marilyn Mosby, is the state attorney, said, we did keep them apprised. It's a very high-profile case. We told them this was coming.
Even if the family thought that Adnan did not do it.
Yes.
All that means for them then, ultimately, is nobody was ever caught for murdering their daughter.
That's right. They have no closure.
Yeah.
In other words, and their daughter
and, you know,
died.
nothing brings the loved one back. But if you think the person who did it's at least not going to do it to anybody else and is paying for it.
Right.
But then if you think they just got away with it, that I don't know how you live with that.
It's terrible. Some people say, look, he served 20 years. There was a lot of doubt, but he served 20 years on a murder conviction. A lot of people think he should spend the rest of his life in prison. So you can understand the family's perspective.
So if he's legally free and clear at this point, can he like do a civil suit against the original prosecutors because their dereliction of their duty cost him 20 years of his life?
Yes. The answer is yes. He could try
if they
to lawyer
deliberately
up
withheld this evidence
and say, I've been wrongly imprisoned for 20 years. A prosecutor has said they didn't have enough evidence to convict me and had to release me. It's not actually a bad case to bring civilly. I don't think Adnan will do it. I think Adnan wants to turn the page because when you file this civil suit, my goodness, remember the burden of proof is much lower in a civil case than it is in a criminal case. And I think it would be really unseemly for him to collect a couple $1 million in a settlement with the city after all this. I think he probably wants to turn the page.
I don't know, because he's not suing the family of the girlfriend.
No. He's always maintained it is a tragedy that my ex-girlfriend died.
If there were prosecutors who knowingly withheld evidence in order to get your conviction that you didn't do, if he knows he didn't do it, you gotta pay for that. Like, you destroyed my life.
There will be another news cycle of all of the evidence that points in the direction of him having committed the crime, because the state will defend itself in a civil case. Even if they said criminally, we're going to let you go, we don't want you in prison anymore, we didn't have enough to convict you, you better believe they're going to say we had more than enough to charge you and bring these charges against you in the first
dirty.
case.
We sent you to jail knowing we were wrong, and if you try and say anything, we're just going to make you look bad.
Yeah, they will definitely dirty him up. Right now he's looking wrong. Yeah, I look, I agree with you. And you may still see this, and you will at least probably see him lawyer up and explore these options. I'm not sure if he'll file a case or if the city will just say, here's a little bit of money to just make this go away and put this behind us. It remains to be seen, but he is a free man, and that's the biggest thing that he wanted and that his family wanted. They fought tirelessly for this. This is the Serial podcast didn't really take a position that he should be freed. They just sort of cast all the doubt and laid it out there in a very sort of objective way. But it does seem like a triumph of true crime sort of podcasting. The reason you're interested in the story is that it was potentially wrongly decided. It's not just marching you through.
I mean, you would think the podcast is sort of what directly led to him getting out.
Without question.
It put pressure on the officials, and it opened up the case to people who were interested in it, and like, maybe we should take another look at this.
And for a duration, I mean, this thing was the podcast was in 2014. Then there was a series on, I believe, HBO Max. Yeah. So there's been a tension on this case that the prosecutors, even the new ones who came into power, weren't able to outrun it. They were always answering questions about Adnan Syed. Now they no longer have to answer the same questions, I guess. They'll always have the questions from Heyman's family. But
also makes you sad wondering how many people are in prison for decades that didn't get a podcast, who also didn't do it.
That's
and maybe
right.
people withheld evidence in those trials. So
you'll see more of those podcasts. The Innocence Project probably is just a pipeline for podcasts at this point, given the outcome in this case. I want to move to the last one, which is a tailor-made story for Eric Colley, who is our music guy, but also an avid comic book fan.
I am a giant comic book nerd. This crime hurts my heart. Ray Buffer is an actor. He's one of those people you've seen in things. He was in ER, Curb Your Enthusiasm. He's a working actor that's been doing things for decades.
He's a that guy.
He's a that guy. Like, that guy.
Yeah.
So he was at a comic book shop in San Diego, and there's security footage of him sliding some comics under his shirt.
Very obviously. I mean,
Very
it's pretty
obvious.
crisp footage. It's not that blurry.
Yeah, and comics, these are, for people who don't know, like in comic shops, the valuable ones are on a backing board to keep them from getting bent. So when he slides under his shirt, it's not just like a magazine. You see the board sticking under the shirt.
Right, which indicates that it's a valuable one, right?
Yeah,
it's
so
not
he
necessarily
stole.
a new issue.
They're saying he took $600 worth of comics, and so then another comic shop in LA goes, "Oh, he tried that with us," and they've released footage where you see him slip something under his shirt, and then an employee comes up and confronts him. You see it, but you can't hear it. There's no audio.
Yeah.
But she's like, basically, I'm going to call the cops.
Yeah.
And you see him quickly, while she's not looking, slide it back out from under his shirt and put it on a table and walk out.
Yes.
So now they're putting this video out. So he's banned from all these comic shops. I think cops are now investigating. It's a petty crime. It's $600. It's not a felony.
Yeah. Now, legally, I wanted to sort of say, when he puts it in his shirt and then he's confronted in the one video, they said, I'm going to call the cops unless you there's sort of an assumption that she's saying, unless you put it back, cops are getting involved. And he does put it back.
Well, we don't know if she said unless you put it back.
It's unclear.
She could have been like, I'm calling cops. I saw you take that. And he's
Right.
like, whoop, and
But he
slips
has-
it back out and drops it on the table.
He has a defense in that case that he's sort of undone the crime. You have to, intend to permanently deprive the shop of the item, and maybe he was just like, as I shop through the store, I stick them under my shirt.
I was just trying to keep it warm.
Yeah, I was just trying to have my hands free, and I needed to stuff it in my shirt. Sort of a joke, but yeah, this is not good for him, and it looks like he now has a bit of an MO of going to shops. If all this video is true, and the cops are investigating both of these, it would be kind of serious. I mean, $600 is not a lot of money, but it's not nothing. And it's
and
comic
also
books are serious business. A lot of them are worth a lot of money.
As a nerd who goes to comic shops, they're like mom and pop shops. They're independently owned. Even if some people sometimes have a couple locations, these are small businesses.
Yeah.
And
some of our reporting indicated that they knew him. He's a guy who frequents comic book shops. As I'm sure if you go to them, they know Eric. That's Eric. Hey, how you doing? What's new in today?
It's sad to me. Like, you're hurting these businesses.
It's really, really awful to see this kind of thing, because I think of them as, I used to collect baseball cards, and they're mom and pop shops.
Yeah.
And the thought of stealing from them, you're not stealing from a faceless corporation, a Walmart or anything. You're stealing from people who amass these collections and sell them to kids and sell them to avid collectors. Yeah. It's pretty awful if these allegations are true. Now, look, he hasn't said anything directly about them.
He deleted all of his social media.
But he deleted his social.
All of it.
Which isn't great.
So then I wonder, he must be a comic fan, because why else would you go to a comic shop?
Sure.
But is it because he was trying to get the money for stealing them, or is it because he just wanted those particular books?
Well, you tell me. You're the collector. I mean, I think the motivations could be mixed, but I think if you go to, there's easier ways to sort of steal things that are just valuable, but not sort of in a personal way. You can go, take gold. You can go to.
Well, it's like stealing jewelry for a lot of people. You don't because
like
you
the
want
jewelry.
a diamond
You just wanna
ring.
fence
You want to
it.
sell it. Yeah.
Yes, comic books are different. Like if I stole a Mickey Mantle baseball card, I'm not looking to put it on eBay. I'm looking to have it. I enjoy looking at the Mickey Mantle baseball card. I assume the same thing is true of a first edition X-Men.
Well,
comic.
and that's the thing too. You'd have to know, because any comic that was that valuable is going to be behind a glass case.
Yes.
He wouldn't have been able to get that without like a smash and grab. So if you see him kind of taking things out of the boxes,
yes. Are there valuable things that as a comic book reader
not
you look in
$600 that
there?
are not going to be in a box? No.
Right. Okay. But he probably has an eye for what's in there.
So then he knew what to
I could
take.
Get some value.
He's like, this is like a $40 book. I'm going to slip this one and this one. And
right. Like a first edition Toxic Avenger under there or something like that.
Are you trying to be a comic nerd? You're just a nerd.
That'll do it for us today. We'll see you next time.
Bye.